more detailed than anything Ricardo had ever received from the expensive specialists he'd hired. One afternoon, unable to contain his curiosity any longer, Ricardo decided to follow her after work. He wanted to understand what drove this woman to care so deeply for his son. He watched as she took 2 buses to reach a modest neighborhood on the edge of the city. The houses were small, the gardens overgrown, and the streets quiet. She entered a humble home with peeling paint and an untidy yard. Ricardo waited in his car for almost 2 hours. Then he saw her come out, this time with a teenage boy, maybe 15 or 16. The boy walked with a slight limp, but his movements were confident and fluid. Ricardo immediately recognized him. It was Miguel, the brother she had spoken about. He followed them to a nearby park, where a group of boys were playing soccer. Miguel joined in, and to Ricardo's surprise, he wasn't struggling to keep up. He was shining. The boy dribbled, sprinted, and scored goals with remarkable agility, moving as if his body had never known limits. From a distance, Ricardo felt a strange mixture of awe and disbelief. Miguel was living proof that Elena's unconventional methods worked. He slowly approached the field. Elena was sitting alone on a bench, smiling proudly as she watched her brother play. When she turned and saw Ricardo standing nearby, her expression changed instantly. "Mr. Ricardo?" she said, startled. "What are you doing here?" "Following you," he answered honestly. "I needed to understand why you care so much about my son." Elena lowered her gaze, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't know what you expect me to say." "The truth," Ricardo pressed. "Why would a housemaid spend so much time and energy on her employer's child? What's your real reason?" Elena stayed silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on Miguel as he scored another goal. Then she took a slow breath. "My brother isn't just my responsibility, Mr. Ricardo," she said softly. "He's my reason for everything. When the doctors told us Miguel would never walk normally, I made myself a promise that I'd prove them wrong." "And you did," Ricardo said quietly. "Yes," Elena nodded. "But not just because of exercises or therapy. It happened because I never stopped believing in him. I never let him feel like he was less than anyone else." She paused for a moment, choosing her next words carefully. "When I look at Daniel, I see that same spark, the same potential. But I also see adults around him who've already given up." Her words landed like a slap. Ricardo's jaw tightened. "Are you saying I've given up on my son?" "I'm not accusing you of anything, sir," she replied gently. "I'm just saying Daniel needs someone who believes he can. Someone who believes in what seems impossible." At that moment, Miguel jogged over, sweaty and smiling after the game. "Elena, who's this man?" he asked. "This is my boss," Elena said. "Mr. Ricardo Wellington." Miguel extended his hand respectfully. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Wellington." "Elena always talks about your work." Ricardo shook his hand firmly, studying the young man's confident stance. The kind of strength that came not from wealth or privilege, but from perseverance and love. "Elena told me about you," Ricardo said quietly. "It's amazing how well you play," Ricardo said, watching Miguel score another goal. Miguel smiled and shrugged. "Elena taught me that limits only exist in our minds. She always said that if I really wanted something, I'd find a way to make it happen." Ricardo turned to Elena with a different expression now, part admiration, part guilt. He finally understood how wrong he'd been about her. She hadn't been trying to overstep, impress, or earn favors. She was simply trying to give Daniel the same miracle she'd once created for her brother. But one question still lingered. In the past few weeks, Ricardo had noticed something strange. Some nights, long after her work was done, Elena would quietly leave the mansion carrying a large bag. He had no idea where she went or what she carried, but the mystery gnawed at him. A week later, curiosity got the better of him. It was almost 10 o'clock when Elena slipped out again, her familiar bag slung over her shoulder. Ricardo followed her from a distance as she took a late bus and got off near a modest building in her neighborhood. The sign above the entrance was faded, San Pedro Community Rehabilitation Center. Ricardo peered through one of the dusty windows and froze. Inside, Elena stood in the middle of a small improvised room surrounded by about 15 children with physical disabilities. The same creative energy she used with Daniel filled the space. Pillows, ropes, bottles, and toys were transformed into therapy tools. The children called her Teacher Elena and followed her instructions with laughter and excitement. Her mysterious bag, he realized, was full of homemade therapy materials, learning toys and equipment she had built herself. And in that dimly lit room, Ricardo saw something that silenced every judgment he'd ever made. Elena helping a little girl, maybe 7 years old, take her first steps without crutches. The girl's face lit up with pure joy. Elena clapped, tears in her eyes. The pride and love on her face stirred something deep inside Ricardo's chest. She wasn't just a maid. She was a woman with a calling, one far greater than anything money could buy. The next day, Ricardo found her in the kitchen and approached quietly. This time, his tone was gentle. "Elena, I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer." She turned, surprised. "Of course, sir. Why didn't you ever tell me about your work at the community center?" Elena hesitated, her hands trembling slightly over the sink. "Mr. Ricardo, I can explain." "There's no need to explain," he interrupted softly. "Just tell me the truth. Do you have a professional qualification in physical therapy?" For a long moment, Elena said nothing. Then she exhaled slowly, as though releasing a secret she'd carried for years. "Yes, sir. I do," she admitted quietly. "I graduated 3 years ago from the State University. I studied on a full scholarship while working nights to pay my bills." Ricardo blinked in disbelief. "You're a trained physical therapist, and you're working here as a maid?" Elena nodded, her voice steady but filled with quiet pain. "Because no one wants to hire a black physical therapist from a poor neighborhood, especially one without experience in a private clinic. So I took what I could. Cleaning houses was the only door that opened." Her words cut deeper than Ricardo expected. For the first time, he saw not just her strength, but the injustice she lived with every day. Elena looked down, her voice calm but tinged with sadness. "I tried, sir. I sent my resume to dozens of clinics and hospitals, but every answer was the same. No experience, not a good fit." Ricardo felt something heavy stir inside him. Guilt. He had spent his whole life hiring people based on status and reputation, never realizing how unfair that could be. "So you took this job, knowing you could have been practicing as a therapist?" he asked quietly. Elena nodded. "I needed work, sir. And when I met Daniel, I thought maybe I could help him. Quietly, without anyone knowing. I never imagined you'd find out." Just then, small footsteps echoed in the kitchen. Ricardo turned and froze. Daniel was walking. For the first time since he was born, his son was walking on his own. The boy's steps were cautious, but steady. He went straight to Elena and hugged her tightly. "Elena, I did it! I walked, just like you said I would." Ricardo's throat closed. For months, he had doubted her. And now he was watching a miracle unfold before his eyes. Elena knelt beside Daniel, smiling through tears. "I knew you could do it, champ. You're the bravest boy I know." Daniel turned toward his father, eyes shining. "Daddy, did you see? I walked all by myself. Aunt Elena taught me that if I really believe, I can do anything. If I really believe, I can do anything." Ricardo dropped to his knees and wrapped his son in his arms, crying openly. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't believe in you, the way she did." Elena quietly stepped back, trying to leave the room unnoticed, but Ricardo's voice stopped her. "Elena, please wait." She turned, her eyes wet. "I owe you an apology," he said softly. "No, several. You gave me back my son, and I treated you like you were just another employee." "Mr. Ricardo, you don't have to—" "Let me finish," he interrupted gently. "You're far more than I ever deserved in this house. And now, I want to make things right." 3 months later, Elena's life looked completely different. Ricardo had officially appointed her as Daniel's personal physical therapist, with a salary 5 times higher than before. But more importantly, he had helped rebuild the São Pedro Community Rehabilitation Center from the ground up. The once small makeshift room was now a bright, modern clinic, filled with new equipment and joy. Elena led a full team, 2 physical therapists, a child psychologist, and an occupational therapist, and every child in the neighborhood received free treatment. Ricardo himself began spending afternoons at home, helping Daniel with his exercises, and finally bonding with his son. For the first time in years, laughter filled their home again. Even Sophia, who had initially resisted the changes, had become one of Elena's strongest supporters. The 2 women grew close, and Sophia often joined her at the center, volunteering with the children. As for Daniel, he had become a little hero at school, proudly telling everyone how his Aunt Elena taught him to believe in himself. And deep down, Ricardo knew the real therapy wasn't just for Daniel. It was for all of them. Not only could Daniel walk normally now, but he also played in adaptive sports and joined every activity with joy and energy. More than his physical recovery, he had gained something far greater: unshakable confidence and a rare compassion for someone his age. One sunny afternoon, Daniel asked to give a presentation at school about his recovery journey. Ricardo and Sophia sat proudly in the audience, their eyes glistening as Daniel walked onto the stage. No crutches, no help, just courage. "My name is Daniel Wellington," he began, his voice steady and bright. "A year ago I used crutches and thought I'd never do what other kids do. Today, I want to share how I learned that limitations exist only in our minds." The room fell silent as Daniel spoke. He didn't use fancy words, just honesty. He talked about the tough days, the moments he wanted to give up, and how Elena had entered his life like an angel in disguise. He told them how she taught him to celebrate every small victory and to never stop trying. "Elena taught me that it doesn't matter where you come from or what color your skin is," Daniel said, scanning the crowd until he found her. "What matters is the size of your heart and your willingness to help others. Today I can walk, run, play soccer, and make new friends. But the best thing I've learned is to believe in myself." The audience erupted in applause, some people wiping tears, others cheering. Ricardo felt pride well up inside him like never before. Pride in his son, and in the woman who had changed their lives forever. After the presentation, Elena approached Daniel, her eyes shining. "You were incredible, champ. I'm so proud of you," she said softly. "Wait, Elena. I have a surprise for you," Daniel replied, taking an envelope from his father's hands. "Dad helped me write this." Elena opened it carefully, her hands trembling. Inside was a full scholarship for a specialization in pediatric physical therapy at the country's top university, and a partnership agreement for the newly expanded rehabilitation center, now to be named the Elena Miguel Institute of Child Therapy. I can't accept this," she murmured, overwhelmed. "Yes, you can," Ricardo said gently, stepping closer. "And you will. This isn't charity. It's justice. It's recognition for everything you've done, not just for Daniel, but for all the children you've helped." Sophia took Elena's hands. "You're not our employee anymore, Elena. You're our family. And family looks after each other." Just then, Miguel, who had been sitting proudly in the front row, hugged his sister tightly. "You always told me to believe in myself," he said with a grin. "Now it's your turn to believe in the impossible." 2 years later, the Elena Miguel Institute had become a national symbol of hope and healing. Elena completed her specialization with honors and began treating children from all over the country. Her approach, blending science, creativity, and genuine love, transformed how rehabilitation was understood in Brazil. Daniel, now 8 years old, became the Institute's youngest ambassador, visiting schools to talk about inclusion and courage. His bond with Elena remained as strong as ever. To him, she was more than a therapist. She was his second mother. And Ricardo? He had learned the most valuable lesson of his life. True success isn't measured by wealth or power, but by the lives we touch and the hearts we help heal. The true value of a person is not measured by diplomas, wealth, or social status, but by the power to transform lives through love and dedication. Elena had entered the Wellington home as a maid, yet she revealed herself as an angel in disguise, sent to prove that miracles often appear through the hands of those the world tends to overlook. The story of the Wellington family became a powerful reminder. Sometimes we must lose our certainties to discover deeper truths, and that life's greatest treasures often come wrapped in humility, in the quiet, tireless hearts of those who serve with unconditional love. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to receive more inspiring stories showing how small acts of kindness can change entire lives.